You've been told to visualize. You've heard it preached 1,000 times. See it and you shall have it. But I tell you now, most of you are doing it entirely wrong. You close your eyes and watch yourself having what you want, as though you are watching a film about someone else's life. You become the observer instead of the creator. You project your desire outside of yourself, rather than embodying it. And that is the very reason why it does not come. I am not asking you to see yourself climbing the ladder. I am commanding you to feel your hand grasp the rung, to hear your shoe scrape the step, to taste the atmosphere of height. Visualization is not watching, it is being. There is no magic in merely watching images like a daydreamer. The power is in stepping into the image, making it so vivid, so real, that when you open your eyes, it feels like you left the actual world behind. You must enter the scene. This is what I have taught, to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Not the picture of it, not the hope for it, but the feeling, the sensory vividness that says, it is already done. Do not visualize your goal from afar like a fan at a theater. Become it, live from it. This is the holy secret of all manifestation. When you imagine a scene, it must be seen from within. You must be in the room, not watching the room. You must hear the voices, smell the air, touch the objects around you, use all 5 senses in your imagination, until they become one sense, the sense of certainty. And what happens when you persist in this state? The outer world bends, without effort to match it. Not because you willed it so, but because you assumed it was so. And the world, being only yourself, pushed out, had no choice but to reflect you. Do not worry about the world of Caesar, the world of how and when and why. Your job is to imagine correctly and then rest. The seed does not grow by your watching it. It grows because you know it is planted. And so I say unto you, stop visualizing like a spectator. Begin imagining as a participant. Assume it is done. And dare to walk as though the world cannot contradict you. For it never has, and it never will. Most individuals fail at manifesting their desires. Not because the desire is wrong, but because the method by which they engage the imagination is misapplied. They have been told to visualize, and so they do, but in the wrong manner. They sit quietly, close their eyes, and begin to form an image of themselves in the third person. They see a version of themselves from the outside, as though watching a character in a film. They observe themselves walking into a mansion, shaking hands at a board meeting, standing on a beach, or being handed a check. But I say to you, this is not the way. You are not to watch, you are to become. There is an immeasurable difference between looking at yourself from the outside and looking through the eyes of your fulfilled self. When one watches himself having the thing, he separates the self from the experience. He places the fulfillment in a distant frame, beyond the now, beyond the present consciousness. He says silently, that is what I wish to become, instead of proclaiming, this is what I already am. The imagination is creative only when it is embodied. Only when you become the image, feel from the inside out, and assume the posture and perspective of your fulfilled self, does the image gain power. You do not look at yourself climbing the ladder. You feel the wood beneath your hands. You feel the stretch in your legs. You hear the creak of each step. You do not see yourself receiving the award. You hear the applause. You feel the weight of the trophy in your hand. You sense the warmth in your chest that says, this moment is real. This is why many fail despite sincere effort. They believe visualization to be a mental picture, and it is. But it must be a picture from within, not of yourself, but from yourself. You must enter the image, be inside it. Do not watch yourself shaking hands. Instead, look into the eyes of the one you are shaking hands with. Do not see yourself signing a contract. Feel the pen in your hand. Hear the scratch of ink on paper. Let the scene be lived, not imagined as a spectator, but enacted as a participant. This is the fine line between dreaming and creating. A dreamer watches, a creator embodies, a dreamer hopes, a creator assumes. One posture creates delay, the other initiates the motion of reality. If you place your desire outside of yourself, even beautifully imagined, you are still affirming its absence. But if you accept the desire as already fulfilled by dwelling inside its feeling, then you are affirming its presence. And what you affirm consistently must become your world. Imagination, when used correctly, is not an escape. It is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. It is not fantasy, but causation. The image you assume from within becomes the seed that must unfold, and so you must be careful how you visualize. Do not allow yourself to drift into the role of watcher. That is the trap. You must awaken in the dream and realize that you are not the audience. You are the actor, the stage, the script, and the applause. All creation begins in first-person experience. No one can imagine for you, no one can live in your scene. Therefore, you must step into the scene and live there until the external world conforms. Do not try to control the outer. Control your inner perception, and the outer will reflect it precisely. The outer world is inert without the inner motion. This is why one short moment of embodied visualization is worth more than hours of vague watching. One single scene, fully felt from within, lived in as though it were present fact, is enough to set the entire machinery of the universe into motion. You need not repeat it with strain, you must only be faithful to it. Return to it with love, not effort. Re-enter the scene each night, each idle moment, not to change it but to relive it. If you are not seeing from the eyes of the fulfilled self, you are not visualizing correctly. And when the visualization is incorrect, the result is delay, frustration, and contradiction. But once you shift from third person to first person, from observing to experiencing, the world shifts with you. For the true act of creation is to feel the end from within, not to watch it from afar. This then is the great art. To live now as if it were true, not to pretend, but to assume. Not to wish, but to be. Not to look at, but to look from. And when you do, quietly, faithfully, and with conviction, then the scene, once imagined, becomes your world. To imagine effectively is not to simply create a vague picture in the mind. Real imagination, when used as the tool of creation, engages the fullness of your being. It is not confined to sight alone. It must include sound, touch, taste, scent, and above all, feeling. The imagination that creates must be embodied and sensorial. You must awaken your inner senses and walk through the unseen world with as much alertness and sensitivity as you do the outer world. When one visualizes properly, it is not enough to see the scene. You must hear the voices within it. The laughter, the applause, the spoken congratulations. You must feel the weight of the moment in your body, the warmth of the sunlight, the breeze brushing your skin, the texture of the clothes you wear. What does the room smell like? Is there coffee, perfume? The aroma of wood or fresh linen? These are not small details, they are the substance of belief. They are the anchors that tell your deeper mind, this is real. And when the subconscious accepts it as real, it moves all things to make it so. Do not try to force these sensations, rather allow them to unfold naturally as you surrender into the experience. Ask yourself, what would I feel if this were true? What would I hear? What would I touch? What would surround me? Bring your entire body into the image, not as a passive observer, but as a living participant. Make the imagined moment a vivid event, not a lifeless photograph. Make it real in your senses, and it shall become real in the world. If you imagine receiving a letter of acceptance, do not merely picture the envelope in your hand. Feel its weight. Hear the sound of it tearing as you open it. Let your heart race with anticipation. Hear the inner voice exclaiming, you did it. Let the emotion fill your chest. That emotion, that inner thrill, is the true signature of a successful imagination. The outer world responds not to the cold facts of an image, but to the emotional intensity behind it. Many people fail at manifesting their desires because their imagination is dry and mechanical. They create an image, but they do not live in it. They see themselves at the destination, but they feel as though they are still striving. The body remains in one state while the image pretends another. This dissonance causes stagnation. But if you can make the body feel as though it is already where the mind sees, then body and mind align, and reality must obey. Imagine success, but go beyond the image. Hear the sound of the keys as you unlock the door to your new home. Feel the softness of the furniture. Let your feet walk the polished floor. Smell the newness in the air. Let the senses be intoxicated with the atmosphere of arrival. The more vivid the sensory experience, the less resistance the inner world will offer, and the more quickly the outer world will mold to reflect it. The mind speaks to the body in sensation. That is the hidden language of assumption. To assume something is not to repeat it verbally alone, it is to feel it until every nerve responds to it as true. When you imagine with full sensory vividness, your inner state becomes indistinguishable from physical memory. And once the subconscious accepts it as memory, it must find expression. It is not necessary to visualize the entire journey, only the final scene in full detail. Let it be a short, simple moment, filled with depth and richness. One touch, one look, one embrace, but saturated in sensory clarity. Feel your body's reaction. Let it laugh. Let it cry. Let it breathe, as though the thing has happened. This is the secret to effortless creation. You are not trying to convince the world. You are impressing the subconscious, and the subconscious responds to belief born in sensation. If you can imagine so vividly that it feels real, the world must obey. For the world is but the shadow of the state you occupy. Change the inner state with feeling, and the shadow must change with it. So do not be content to merely see your desire. Feel it, hear it, taste it, breathe it in, live in it with the fullness of your senses. And in time, that which was once imagined will stand before you, not as a dream, but as a fact. There is a profound difference between living from the end and merely thinking toward it. Most people, when they desire something, hold it out before them like a distant star. They walk through life looking at it, longing for it, hoping someday they will reach it. But in doing so, they confess with every breath that it is not yet theirs. Their every thought says, I am not there. And as long as they continue to say, I am not, they shall remain in that state of separation. To live from the end is to anchor yourself in the assumption that your desire is already fulfilled. It is to make the unseen reality your home. You do not approach it as a beggar asking to be let in. You enter it boldly as one who knows it belongs to them. You think, feel, speak, and act, not as one who hopes, but as one who knows. Imagination is the means by which we enter these unseen states. You do not merely imagine a result. You imagine yourself as the one who already possesses it. You feel the change has occurred, and you dwell in that feeling. This is not about fantasy or wishful thinking. It is a conscious shift in identity. You no longer identify as someone becoming, but as someone who is. When you assume the end, you do not look forward to the day it will happen. You experience the joy of it now. You allow yourself to rest, because what was once hoped for is now accepted as done. That is the mark of true assumption. Not strain, not effort, not longing, but quiet confidence. A man who lives from the end is unmoved by appearances. He may still walk through a world that contradicts his assumption, but he no longer gives it power. He knows that the outer world is simply lagging behind the inner shift. Living from the end means making decisions as the person who already is what they desire to be. You do not ask, should I act this way if it comes true? You act because it has come true. Your behavior becomes an extension of your new identity. Your thoughts begin to align. Your emotions settle into the feeling of certainty, and your outer world begins to echo the new cause within. This is the reason why many delay their manifestations. They wait for proof before they believe. But cause does not follow effect. It precedes it. You must become it within before it can appear without. There is no power in looking forward. There is only power in standing in the state desired, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and accepting it as real. From this place, you do not need to force anything. You simply observe as life rearranges itself around your new conviction. Consider the one who desires wealth. He does not visualize piles of money and pray for its arrival. He steps into the role of the wealthy. He thinks as they think. He sees the world through their eyes. He walks, dresses, and speaks from the state of abundance, not in pretension, but in genuine assumption. He knows that it is so, even if the world has not yet caught up. And because he dwells in that state consistently, the world has no choice but to reflect it. Likewise, the one who seeks love must not look outward for signs of affection. She must first dwell in the feeling of being cherished. She must feel the warmth of companionship, the safety of belonging, the joy of being seen and chosen. These are not images to look toward, but states to live from. When she occupies this state faithfully, love must come. It cannot do otherwise. Living from the end is not about pretending. It is not about deception. It is about spiritual law. You claim the thing within, and by the law of consciousness, it becomes externalized. You do not need to know the means. You only need to remain in the end. Hold it. Feel it. Let it become your dwelling place. What you accept as true within must be expressed without. Therefore begin now. Claim the state. Assume it boldly. Live from it in thought, in speech, in silence. Let your inner world become saturated with the mood of fulfillment. And as you persist, the outer will conform. Not by chance, not by luck, but by law. The world you see, touch, and move through each day is not separate from you. It is not something imposed upon you by outer forces or fates beyond your control. It is not an independent reality standing apart from your inner life. The truth, which has been hidden in plain sight, is this. The outer world is nothing but your inner world made visible. It is yourself, objectified. The people you meet, the circumstances you face, the conditions you experience, all of it is a mirror, faithfully reflecting the state of consciousness you consistently occupy. There is no chance, no coincidence, no accident in the realm of manifestation. All that appears to you has its root in what you have accepted as true, what you have entertained in imagination, what you have felt deeply within. If you believe in limitation, you will encounter obstacles. If you feel lack, you will see it on every street corner. If you carry resentment, life will return to you faces and voices that echo that resentment back to you. You may not trace the thread immediately, but the thread is always there. Cause and effect are not separated by time. They are separated only by awareness. When one truly understands that the world is himself pushed out, he stops blaming. He no longer looks at another and says they are the reason I suffer. He no longer curses the economy, the system, the past, or fate. He turns inward, for he knows that to change his world, he must change the assumptions from which he lives. He recognizes that the seed of every condition was first planted in the garden of imagination, and if he wishes to harvest a new result, he must sow a new cause. This is the great revelation that frees man from victimhood and empowers him with dominion. You are not reacting to a world that is fixed. You are living inside a world that is responsive, flexible, and reflective. It molds itself to your dominant feeling. It rearranges to echo your inner conversations. It presents you with the images and conditions that match your belief about who you are. This is why self-concept is everything. If you believe you are unwanted, no matter how kind or beautiful you are, the world will reflect your belief by withholding affection. If you believe you are poor, the world will show you just enough lack to validate your internal picture. You may work harder, strive longer, but until the assumption within shifts, the outer cannot offer you lasting change. The world does not change by effort alone, it changes by identity. To transform your experience, you must first observe what you are inwardly claiming. What thoughts do you entertain when no one is watching? What feelings do you revisit daily? What do you secretly accept as true? These silent, repetitive assumptions form the blueprint from which your world is built. The office you work in, the friends you attract, the delays you encounter, all arise from this blueprint. Not as punishment, but as reflection. But do not be discouraged by this, be empowered. For if your current conditions are the result of former assumptions, then by changing your assumptions today, you guarantee a new tomorrow. Begin now to impress upon yourself a new story. Not of struggle, but of fulfillment. Not of separation, but unity. Not of doubt, but conviction. And as you persist in that state, the outer will yield. You need not manipulate others. You need not persuade anyone. You need only persuade yourself that it is already done. When you occupy the state of being the one who has, who is, who knows, then everything around you begins to echo that certainty. Doors open. People appear. Events unfold. Not because you forced them, but because your inner world spoke a new command, and the outer world, being only a mirror, obeyed. This is not imagination as escape. This is imagination as instruction. The world listens to the tone of your inner voice. If it is the voice of lack, it will answer in kind. If it is the voice of abundance, it must respond. The law is impersonal, exact, and unfailing. Therefore, examine not the world, but your inner state. And if you do not like what the world is showing you, do not fight the world. Revise the self. There is no one to change but self. There is no condition to overcome but the inner condition. There is no outer power holding you down, only an inner belief making it seem so. As within, so without. That is the eternal principle, and once understood, it becomes the most liberating knowledge a man can possess. It is not by might, nor by striving, nor by ceaseless labor that creation is accomplished, but by persistence in the assumption of the end. All things are brought into being by inner conviction, not by outer force. The world was not made by the sweat of the brow, but by the word, and that word is not mere sound, but the inner declaration that what is desired already is. To assume a state and to persist in it without deviation, regardless of what the senses declare, is the secret by which all things are made manifest. Most people shift too soon. They begin with great excitement, picturing the thing they want, dwelling in the feeling of fulfillment. But then the outer world shows them contradiction. A bill arrives, a delay happens, an old pattern reappears, and they waver. They leave the state and begin to entertain doubt. They ask, why has it not come, or what if this doesn't work? In that moment, they return to the former self, the self that has not, and in doing so, they perpetuate that very reality. Creation does not require repetition. It requires persistence. To persist means to remain faithful to the invisible reality until it becomes visible. To remain loyal to the unseen over the seen. To feel rich though the bank says otherwise. To feel love though no one has yet spoken the words. To feel healthy though the body still holds pain. This is not fantasy. This is faith, and faith is the substance of things hoped for. The evidence of things not seen. Persistence is not effort. It is not strain, it is quiet confidence. It is the steady dwelling in a state of mind, as natural and habitual as breathing. The one who persists does not go about forcing change in the outer world. He rests in the knowing that the outer must follow the inner. Just as the seed buried in the soil needs no struggle to become the tree, the assumption faithfully held will, in time, become the form. If you plant an acorn and return to dig it up each morning to see if it has taken root, it will never grow. And yet this is what many do with their desires. They question, doubt, revise, panic, analyze. They uproot the assumption with fear and disbelief. But the one who understands the law knows better. He plants the seed in imagination and waters it with faith. He tends to it by returning, in thought, to the end already fulfilled. He trusts the process, for he knows the law cannot fail. You are not called to make it happen. You are called to remain in the state where it already has happened. From that place you act, speak, and live. You do not check for signs. You do not look for confirmation. The assumption itself is your confirmation. The mood of fulfillment is your proof. When the inner state becomes more real than the outer facts, then the facts must yield. This is not philosophy, it is law. There is a difference between imagining something and dwelling in it. Many imagine a thing once or twice and then say, "Why has it not come?" That is not dwelling, that is visiting. Creation requires residence. You must live in the end, abide in the feeling, make it your home. Each time doubt arises, return to the state. Each time you are tempted to react to the senses, go back within. Do not allow the facts to shake your knowing. Stand firm, remain faithful. The outer world is slow to catch up only when you keep changing your inner address. But if you hold one position long enough, all things around you begin to reflect that position. The world bends not to will, but to identity. And identity is formed by repetition, by persistence, by saturation of thought and feeling. You do not need to beg the world to change. You need only to stop changing within. Let this be your work, not to force, not to chase, but to assume and persist. Let your inner conversations agree with your desire. Let your emotional reactions match the end fulfilled. Let your actions follow naturally from your new self. And even when nothing yet appears to change, continue. For reality is delayed only by your own instability. Once you are stable in the assumption, the world must move to match you. Creation is not about doing more, it is about believing longer. It is not about adding energy, it is about sustaining vision. The world conforms to the one who does not waver. To persist is to prove the unseen real. And once it is real to you within, it cannot help but become real without. You now know the secret that has always been yours. The key was never in effort, struggle, or chance. It was in the quiet, inner act of assumption. All things begin and end within consciousness. To imagine rightly is to create. To feel the end is to summon it. To persist in that inner reality is to command the outer to reflect it. For the world cannot resist what you firmly accept as true. No one and nothing is greater than your own wonderful human imagination. It is the womb of worlds, the silent builder, the divine operant power within you. You are not here to chase shadows, to fix effects, or to argue with appearance. You are here to awaken, to remember who you are, and to assume the highest, knowing that what you assume with conviction must crystallize into fact. Do not seek with your eyes, see with your soul. Walk in the assumption that your desire is already yours, and life will form around your vision. Whether the outer reflects it yet or not, remain loyal to the unseen. For it is more real than what your senses now perceive. Live from the end with the feeling of fulfillment. Let your inner world be saturated with the sensory vividness of your wish fulfilled. And above all, persist. Return again and again to the state of the fulfilled self, until it becomes your dwelling place. The world, though it may delay, cannot deny the man who refuses to leave his assumption. Now, go within, assume quietly, feel deeply, persist faithfully, and the world shall show you who you truly are.